right, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emily Spranger. I'm an academic trainer in the Center for Teaching and Learning, and we are joined by one of our very own NCU faculty members, Dr. Jeff Belsky, and for his webinar today, Motivating the Complex Remote Workforce. Couple of housekeeping items. As always, this webinar is being recorded and we will post it in the CTL LibGuides page under the webinar section. Of course, we welcome conversation in the chat. The only tidbit there is if you want everyone to see your post, make sure you select the everyone function of that dropdown in the chat. Please post any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we will either get to those at the end of our webinar or throughout, depending on the breaks here. And last thing, I want you to know that a live transcript is available should you want to see the scrolling subtitles. You'll just need to select at the bottom of your Zoom live transcript and show subtitle if you'd like to view those. Thanks so much for popping in the chat where you're all joining us from. It's nice to have you all here. And I am going to turn you over to Dr. Jeff Belsky.
All right, fantastic, Emily. Thank you so much. And also thank you all who have decided to take some time today to join us for this webinar. Thanks to NCU. I always have an applaud there to put such exciting things out there for everyone. And most of the time I'm actually on the other end listening in, but every once in a while I get the opportunity to be in front of the camera, which is fantastic. So Emily's actually going to help me out with this. If you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat box, and either I'll take a break and answer the questions as you know, as she brings them to me, or if I forget, I told Emily to just go ahead and jump right in anytime. I see people all over the place coming in, and that's fantastic. I'm actually in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We got about 14 inches or 15 inches of snow here where I am right now. And this morning it was about 4 degrees. So whenever I see things like Florida and Texas and other places that I'm looking at, you know, I am extremely jealous. But thank you so much for joining me for this talk, and I'm really excited about talking about it because it's something that one of the things that everybody's talking about, and you know, with the whole remote work and all the facets that's going along with remote work. But today I'm going to concentrate a little bit of the efforts on really looking at motivating people that are in the remote workforce. But I want to kind of set the stage a little bit here to talk about a couple of things before I jump into really some strategies that are out there. So the first thing that I want to do is to look at, you know, just so that we're all on the same page looking at this. And first off, you know, we have to come to some real understanding of balancing out this whole thing about remote work, because it's not for everyone. And, you know, whenever I do seminars on remote work, it's sometimes difficult because of the fact that, you know, I'm not talking about everybody and in every circumstance. So it's not for everyone, and not all positions in the organization can actually be remote. And I have an example there. You know, an aircraft mechanic can't fix planes from home, and we could talk about a plumber that can't fix, you know, your pipes from home. So there are some things that just doesn't fit into this whole mold of being remote work. The other thing is it's continually evolving. It's changing. It's you know, controversial. Some organizations like it, some don't. Some are still questioning it. Some are. It's confusing as to what's happening with remote work. The other thing is today we're going to touch on the surface of motivating factors. And if you do a quick search on Google just for remote workforce, you'll see 260 million results, 3.5 million news items, and 1.5 million videos. The information is everywhere. So I'm going to define it really into a few simple strategies that, when you look at them, it might be, wow, this is kind of simple. And in reality, some of it is. But some organizations are not utilizing the strategies. Full-time, I'm a consultant, and I work with organizations all over the United States. I have some clients in China and some in the UK. And this is something that is really discussed on a continual basis, because it's one of those areas where it sometimes is overwhelming, and organizations are fighting whether they should be doing this or not. So what I'm going to cover today is just some simple strategies that, like I said, you might look at it and say, wow, that's pretty simple. Believe it or not, a lot of organizations are not even using the simple strategies. But the ones that I provide you, maybe look at those and see if your organization is actually implementing them. And you as a leader or a manager, you can implement them also. Okay. The next thing is, it's this whole thing of, why people are talking about it so much. Why is this so important? And what makes this such a hot topic? And it really is a hot topic. First off, a couple years ago when this whole thing of COVID came about, this is remote work wasn't new. It wasn't something that, was never heard of before. Organizations were doing it. I mean, they had alternate schedules and flexibility and all of that. But in reality, we went from going 40 miles an hour to 400 miles an hour overnight. Organizations were faced with not even having technology ready or anything. So, and it was a cultural shock. It was basically, not to come into the office, work from home. And people that, like myself, spent 25 years in an office, all of a sudden you're working from home. It's like, wait a second, how do I do this? What do I do? How do I communicate? It's not the norm. It's not, we're not used to this. And how do I lead people? How do I have a team of people that are remote? What is this? What's Zoom and what's Teams? And, how do I use this? And, it was a lot of confusion. The technology curve was there, and needing different things at home, and then there's this whole thing of human resources, which was turned upside down because of the disruption. How do we do policies, procedures? What do we do about time off? What do we do? How do we know people are doing what they're supposed to be doing? It was completely turned upside down overnight. And I had one client that called me up and said, we have 40 people that need to be, working from remote tomorrow, and half of them don't even have computers at home that they're not sharing with their kids. We don't know what to do. So this is where it's became a huge conversation with organizations. Now, we've learned to adapt over time, but it's not going to change. And there's some very, very strong statistics that are out there right now that, and you can see some of them on the screen here, how many people are going to be remote. And that 32 or 36.2 million, that's conservative. Because the way things are going right now and the demands that employees are having to be remote, that's probably going to be higher than that. You can see some of the other statistics where, people, the percentages of women and men will quit their jobs if they're not even allowed to work remote. They're preferring to work from their homes. That's where they want to be, and they'll be more loyal to the organization. And look at this: 65% of workers that have been surveyed desire to remain remote. They don't want to go back. So the whole thing is individuals that have now had a taste of being remote, and organizations who at first considered it possibly not possible are finding out that it is. And now they're starting to trying to figure out how we can do this and how we can make it work. There's some myths that are out there about remote work. And I want to run through these, and this is all building up to the problem and the thing that we're going to be talking about as far as motivation. And some of these have been already proven wrong, but that remote work is low productivity. People were thinking that individuals were going to be at home and they weren't going to be working, and they'd be taking care of their kids and not working, and that's not the case. Research is showing that individuals in some cases and in many cases are more productive They're not driving to work. They're not spending time getting there, driving 45 minutes, stuck in traffic, frustrations, and then getting to work, and spending a lot of time maybe in discussions in the hallway, and so they're finding productivity is actually maintaining. The myth of the job not being suitable. Like I said, some jobs are not suitable, but many are, and organizations are starting to define that and starting to look at which jobs are suitable for remote. And they're finding that that there are plenty of jobs that can be done. There's a myth out there that it's not a real job. I work from home. Well, in the past, 5 years ago, people would be like, oh yeah, okay, what do you do? You're working from home. Now it's a normal question. And in reality, more than likely, there's those individuals discussing are both working from home or have some sort of flexibility to work from home. Collaboration. This is one of the things we're going to talk about from motivation, but remote workers do and can collaborate together. Reduce teamwork. Again, that's another one that that is a potential negative to remote work, but it's not all the time. I mean, there's ways around that. Can't effectively lead teams. It's not you can't effectively lead teams, but you need to lead them differently. And this is where sometimes, and we're not going to get into the generational implications on remote work, but considering people like myself in my 50s, being thrown into all of a sudden you're doing Zoom meetings and you're got cameras and all of that. That's brand new for people in different generations. 25-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 30-year-olds, or what, they're used to being on camera and having the screens in front of them. Individuals that have been working in the industry for 30 years weren't used to that, especially if you're a manager now trying to lead teams. So it is a myth that you can't effectively do it. The actual thing about it is that you have to do it differently. It takes too much technology. We know that's not true. It doesn't take a lot of technology. I mean, we're sitting right now, we've got, I don't know, X amount of people that are on this webinar, and we know that it's not a lot of technology. I've got a $30 camera that I'm talking into. So that is not true. And that it costs more. Actually, that's been flipped upside down. That myth has been proven wrong, that it doesn't cost more. In fact, organizations are now weighing out whether it's more effective to have people working at home because then they don't have the office space. So there's some myths there that are really have been proven to not be true over time. Why employees like remote work? And this is going to flow right into some of the motivational things, because in order to motivate people, we need to figure out why they like it and why they don't like it, because that all goes into the whole process of motivation. But people like remote work for a lot of reasons, and I put some up here, and there's more. Okay, again, like I said, I was just touching the surface, but flexible hours, the autonomy, commute time, politics in the office, manage work and personal life, and casual dress, and I have to tell you, I mean. There's a list more on here, but I can totally agree with the ones that I have on there because I lived the life of working in an office for 30 years. And when I weigh it out, yeah, I do see all of these things that are positive as far as working remotely. So I can definitely relate to that because I'm one of those individuals that didn't know any better other than working in an office. And working remote was a scary thing. It was like, wow, you mean I don't go into the office anymore? How do I communicate? How do I talk to people? How do I, all of that? Well, I found that these benefits were so outweighing the negatives. So these are some of the reasons why people like remote work. It doesn't come without frustrations, and it doesn't come without problems. So I never sit here and say, that it is the end all to be all, and it's there's no issues or problems. We all know that there is. Some of them that have come out is, there are issues with lack of communications. If not done properly, people start to feel that there's not collaboration. There's not that social aspect, and we can get into that whole behavioral aspect of of individuals and what they desire and so forth. But if a person has a behavioral tendency of having that interaction, remote work could be a struggle if they're not led the right way. So this feeling of social isolation, it could be a negative aspect. There are technical issues. A couple of days ago, my internet went down, and I'm sure that Zoom goes down. Hopefully, it won't go down here for the next 45 minutes. But it does. I mean, there's technical issues, and we've all experienced that. Sometimes there's this issue with no dedicated office space. We're getting used to the cat walking around and the dog walking around and the dog barking and maybe the baby's crying, and we're getting used to that. But still, it's frustrating for individuals. It's no different than funny thing is, Emily and I were talking right before we got started here, and her dog was behind her and my dog was over here, and I'm getting my dog out of here, and and hiding my dog and saying don't bark, and those are things that are frustrating, and it becomes a challenge at times. So we have those challenges. This whole unclear performance metrics, that's a frustration and a challenge also from working remotely. And that's a management issue. That's a leadership issue there. People are sometimes, what do you expect from me? Am I okay to work, do I work 8 to 5? Or what if I'm working till 7 o'clock at night at home? Or how about if I jump into my office at 9 o'clock at home? This whole variation of work expectation, and how do we measure that this person is doing this, and do you trust me that I'm actually working? So those are some frustrations. Emily, I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions to this point?
Yeah, actually, the couple of things that I wanted to make sure we were able to share on the webinar in the chat, questions, not necessarily, but just some opinions that I thought I would share. A lot of people were agreeing with you about kind of the myths of low productivity being a myth. In this person's opinion, people put in more than they will do in their offices since they are not in any surveillance, as it looks they would be under, I guess, more of like, we can see what you're doing in their actual physical office. Someone mentioned that they surveyed their employees, and 97% of their employees do not want to return to the office or work, and work 100% of the time remote, I believe that says. So most employees would rather work 100% of the time remotely or work a hybrid model. And then there were several bits of conversations about a hybrid model being like a great space to meet in the middle. And someone also shared that they prefer the hybrid model because of these frustrations that you're talking about here on this slide, and the challenges presented here. So it just makes me, I think, like, these are well known, and everybody else is kind of, it has some empathy for, yes, these are some challenges.
Yeah, that's a great point, Emily, and thank you for reviewing that, and thank you for the individuals that wrote some of that. And this whole hybrid model is a great strategy to use also if you can use it. And I have clients on my side that have that as well, and that's really a motivating factor too. I mean, when we look at and I don't want to say there's no right or wrong, but in reality, there is no right or wrong. We're all testing the market here. Okay, we're testing the strategies out. But some people are going for Fridays not being in the office 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or I mean, companies are trying whatever they can to motivate and keep people motivated, but it goes beyond that. And I'm not going to get into a real lengthy conversation on this, but it is a true thing. We've all heard of this thing of the Great Resignation, and I mean, that's out there. I just wrote a blog that's coming out next week, and I coined it it's above the Great Resignation. It's called the Great Frustration, because specifically managers, hiring managers, recruiters, HR, we are all struggling with getting people to work and then keeping people once we get them, okay? And remote work is becoming a normal benefit that people are going to ask for. It's happening right now, and it's going to continue to happen where you're interviewing somebody and they're going to say, well, tell me about your benefits, tell me about your 401k, tell me about your health care, and can I work remotely? It's going to be, and it's already there, a competitive benefit to attract qualified talent. So it is to have some form of remote work, whether it be hybrid, full, or whatever. Organizations are going to have to do that. It's not going to be a question anymore. So great points, and thank you so much, for those comments. Keep them coming, and I'll take a break in another couple minutes here and see if Emily gets anything else. So let's talk about what we do know, and these are sort of this is what it is. First off, remote is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. This is not something that, when COVID's gone, it's done. It's not. Employees are going to demand this, and they are already. It's going to be, organizations are going to be faced with either let's jump on the bandwagon and join the march, or else you risk losing our people, because people are going to be attracted to other organizations. That's what I have here. Remote work has quickly become a normal benefit, and it is. It's going to be something that employees are going to be attracted to, and they're going to weigh that out because there's a cost. And employees right now, statistically, and research has shown that employees are willing to work for less money if they can work remotely. So there's some benefits there to the organization, but culturally it's difficult because organizations are not used to it, especially whenever you have organizations run, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but by generations that are not used to doing it that way. They're more used to having the employee there, seeing them, and so forth. So it is a cultural shift for some generations to culturally shift into that, and it's taking time for some employee or some managers and some organizations. And the last thing I said here was it's not about changing what is inevitable, because it is, but successfully managing the inevitable. We have to learn to manage it. It's not changing it because it's going to happen. We have to confront it. Okay. And one of those pieces is, how do we motivate people? Emily, you jumped on and you got something for me.
I did, and I think it's so perfectly timed, so I have to share it now.
Yeah.
I can't wait. But the question is, and it's kind of really exactly what you're talking about here, is working from home a necessity imposed by external circumstances, or are businesses embracing remote working as a permanent part of their business culture? And I know you mentioned we're like testing the market to see how that is, but I just thought this question really applies to what you're talking about right now, and I had to share it.
Okay, state the question again. I'm sorry, because you went
No
in and out there
problem.
for a second. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is working from home a necessity imposed by external circumstances, or are businesses embracing remote working as a permanent part of their business culture?
Okay, so here's what I can say with that. If we go back, like I said, remote work is not new. It's not this brand new thing that's out there. But I think until businesses were forced to do it, it was the questionable thing that we just don't want to jump into. I mean, organization, and before I went into consulting, I was in corporate for, I was a vice president of a company for many, many years. And it's one of those things where, hey, let's talk about it. Let's put it on our strategic plan. But you know what? Resources, I don't know. We can't figure it out right now. We got more important things to do. And so it was out there, but until it had to happen, okay, then organizations said, we have no choice. We have to invest in it. We have to figure this out. And now we're knee deep, okay? And it's no different than me saying, one of the growing benefits that's out there is unlimited PTO. Now, if I said that to people, okay, maybe some of the people online here would say, "Are you nuts?" But guess what? Companies are dabbling into it, okay? And I guarantee you, many companies are thinking about it, but they're not putting a ton of emphasis on it. Okay, so I'm relating it to the remote work. But if we were forced for some ungodly reason, I don't know why, but we are forced to have people have unlimited PTO, we would all figure out how to do it. We would all figure out how to do it because we're forced to do it. So it's both, or that question, it's both actually. And I think companies are now starting to embrace it because they're being proven wrong in some cases where employees are productive. They don't have to work 8 to 5. They can work whenever. It's, do they get it done? And we're starting to shift. So that whole cultural shift is not, I don't need to worry that you're doing it. I need to worry that it's done. How you do it, that's okay. You can work on your kitchen table. You can do it at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. But if the time frame to get it done is 6 o'clock next Thursday, let's get it done at 6 o'clock next Thursday. And that's where the whole problem with organizations, they couldn't figure out how to monitor people, how to make sure it was getting done. Well, now what they're saying is it is getting done. And employees are working very hard and productivity is just as good, if not better. And now organizations are saying, oh, now it's working because they were forced to do it. So going back to that question, it's kind of flows in between there, you know, and it's, I think it's a positive thing, you know, that we were all forced to do this because I think organizations would have done it over time, but it might not have been in my time frame. I might have been retired by the time it happened, you know.
Right. And you mentioned the unlimited PTO. Someone just popped in the chat that at their place of employment, they have unlimited PTO for exempt employees / managers, and they actually have zero problems with attendance. In fact, people took less time off, which is very interesting.
That is, and in fact, that is what research has shown from the organizations. And I say the small amount because it's not, you know, it's not out there greatly, but it's growing. But what research has shown is that they're taking less time off. With unlimited PTO, they take less time off. And I got to tell you, I am part of that. I have, you know, I mean, I kind of run my own thing. I mean, I'm employed and stuff like that, but you know, it's not like, you know, I could take whenever, but I don't. I mean, I'm in the office working, you know. So, you know, and here's the issue. A lot of people will listen to what I say and say, oh yeah, but there's an employee that's going to do this and then someone's going to take advantage of it. Listen, they're taking advantage of it now. They've been taking advantage of those types of employees have been taking advantage of it for 50 years. Okay. So, and you're never going to get rid of that. So when people say, oh yeah, well, you know, I had an employee that I let work remote and they didn't do anything at all. Well, you know what, that person probably, you put them in office, they wouldn't do anything either. Okay. So we look at it that way, but yeah, research has shown that they're taking actually less time off. So great comments, keep them coming. Okay, so let's take a look at, you know, the goals, they don't change. I'm going to put these all out here, okay? The goals don't change. We still have the same goals with remote workers. I mean, we want to attract the top talent. We want to retain the top talent. We want to motivate and have that culture. We want employee satisfaction. And ultimately, we want productivity. I mean, that's it. Nothing has changed. It's just the method of doing it. So we haven't changed the goals, you know, of putting people into remote workplaces. When you have remote workers that are motivated, all of those things happen. You know, you will attract the top talent because those top talent people want to work remotely, and they're not going to be the ones that are going to be unproductive. They're going to be the ones that are more productive, and you're going to retain the talent because that's what people want. You're going to have satisfied employees, and ultimately productivity is going to increase or stay where it is. It's not going to decrease as long as it's managed properly. Where it will fail is whenever organizations don't have policies, procedures, and leaders that know what they're doing when they're working with the remote workforce. That's where it fails. So I'm going to talk about, in the remaining time here, we've got about half the time left. I'm going to talk about 5 strategies that can be easily implemented for any organization that will help motivate the remote workforce. Is this the only 5? No. Like I said, we are touching the surface on this. And this is the time for managers and organizations to become creative. The 5 that I'm going to list to you, some of them you're going to say, well, yeah, this is basic stuff. But like I said, some organizations aren't even doing this. They are failing at even some of the basics. But if you're a manager and you have remote workers, or you're an organization and you have remote workers, you need to be thinking out of the box. This is a time for you to become so creative and use the resources that we have that will enable you to keep these people motivated. Some of it requires policy changes, procedure changes, KPI change. I mean, it's going to HR, human resources. Like I said, they're turned upside down right now trying to figure out how to do this and how to do it right. That's okay. We're trying to figure it out. But if you're in an organization that is not trying to figure out, then that's where the problem is. Okay. And that's where you get people that are unsatisfied working remotely, and the turnover starts to increase even more than it normally is right now. So let's look at 5 of these. Okay. The first one is home office essentials. It is imperative for any organization that wants to have a motivated work environment, and that's to set them up properly right off the bat. And I have found that talking through some of my clients and so forth, some of the organizations, that's not the case. They're struggling and getting frustrated because they weren't set up originally. Is this a cost to the organization? Yes, but it's also a cost to the organization to set up an office within a building. So there's no difference here. And that's where the mindset has to go for organizations. They have to start thinking that it's not different. It's the same thing. In an office, we pay for the technology, the computers, the internet. We give phones out. We supply the applications. We do cameras, printers, and a bunch of other things that are out there. We still provide that. We need to provide it for people that are home. And to support that home office space, because remember, I told you that one of the frustrating points of working remotely is that people don't have that space. I've talked to people where they got sheets up behind them, or they're, and we've laughed about the sheets, and they, pushed it over, and it's a garage. They're sitting in the garage, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you're sitting in a garage. And they're like, well, I can't do anything else. We can't allow employees, or we can't just allow employees to do that. I mean, we have to have support for them. And sometimes that's monetary support. Sometimes it's, helping them to do something in their office. Do they have a proper desk, a seat, something that allows them to be comfortable? Are we giving them the supplies and filing cabinets and desks and monitors and all of that? We have to set them up. But here's the thing. Some organizations think, oh, you're just a remote, you take care of it yourself. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, we wouldn't have an employee come into the office and say, hey, go take care of it yourself. No, if we were onboarding an employee, we would say, hey, I want that desk cleaned, I want that office cleaned, I want them to have the computers, I want them to have everything set up. So when they come in, it's like, okay, here's your computer, here's your phone, here's your, here's the printers, here's everything. We give them everything. But organizations sometimes struggle with that now. It's like, well, we don't have to do that. Let them work from home. You pay for your own cartridges at printing, and you pay for your own monitor and your own computer. But in the office, organizations pay for it. So see, it's that thought process that we have to change. Okay, a remote worker has no different needs technology-wise and home office-wise as they do in the office. It's the same. So we need to provide that. If we don't provide it, employees are starting to get frustrated. They don't have the resources. I've talked to people and they said, well, my company expects me to pay for, my printing cartridges, and I'm going through them like crazy. And I'm like, Well, if you're in the office, it'd be paying for it, So we can't draw that line. It's a fluid line where, we have to support them at home. And that's one essential, and that's one motivating factor. Okay. Any questions on that? I want to stop for a second, Emily, just to see if there's any questions on that particular point.
No questions, but our lovely Kate did have a great comment in the chat. I like the idea of offering co-work memberships to remote employees who need a place to work.
That's great. And there's places out there, and if those have a cost to it, then organizations need to support that. They need to support the cost of that.
That's it for now, Dr. Belsky.
Okay, great. All right. The second one that I want to talk about, and this is huge. This is communications. Sounds easy, and I have clients that have 20, 30 people across the country, or maybe they're in one location and now they're all remote. And I say, hey, are you communicating? Oh yeah, I'm communicating. And I says, take what you've communicated 5 years or 3 years ago and multiply it by 10, because this is where you will lose the remote workers quicker than anything at all. And that's losing touch with them. Okay. Now it sounds easy. Yeah, I'm just going to communicate with them a little bit more, but let's be a little bit creative here. Okay. Let's just not communicate. Let's do some things differently. I sometimes say, are you sending out just Friday emails? Have a great weekend. Thanks for working so hard this week. Have a great weekend. Staying in touch. Nice and easy. Takes you a minute. Monday opening emails, every once in a while. And of course, vary this, but Monday opening emails. Hey, I hope you had a great weekend. I'm stuck in 14 inches of snow here. I'm cold. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let's have a great week. I'll talk to you this week. Something quick and easy. This is really important, and this is so cool if people can grab a hold of this. And I've been recommending this now for months, and that is for managers that have remote teams, is to update videos. Send out monthly or weekly videos that they see you. It costs you nothing to have a YouTube site, and it's so easy to do. Record a video every Friday or every Monday or once a month or something. Record a video, and just so they can see you. That's building those communications, and that needs to be consistent, because if you do this, and this is what I tell clients, if you do this once or twice and you miss one, I guarantee you'll get an email. Hey, where's that video at? Hey, what's going on? I didn't see it. You'll see that communications becomes very important. And, we're losing touch of being and seeing people. So videos is an easy way of doing it. And YouTube is right there. FaceTime, if you're going to talk to somebody, do a FaceTime instead of a phone call. I have on here, reduce emails and phone conversations and increase visual communications. The more visual you are, the better the communications is. And try to do that as much as possible. One-on-ones, if you had a one-on-one every month before, have it twice now. So everything needs to be kind of elevated. Communication needs to be elevated with remote workers, because if not, there's that disconnect. And then all of a sudden, those negative aspects start to come in where, social isolation and communications and collaboration and all of that starts to come in. I just looked up and I saw something that says, we use MS Teams. Many people shy away from turning on the camera. Okay. This is something that honestly, and I have it somewhere in here, I can't remember, but it's coming up. The cameras should be on. People should see each other. And, I know people sometimes say, I'm not one to be on a camera. Well, listen, how do you work in an office? Do you hide in an office, close the door? How do you go get a cup of coffee? So that's just excuses to me, that's just excuses to say, well, I'll be doing emails while the meeting's going on. That's what that is. Okay. So I don't want to be on camera as an excuse, because then, that means you have a fear of, a lot of things, and maybe you can't even go into the office. And that's a whole other conversation. So I do believe that the face-to-face is really, really important. These one-on-ones, increase them, like I said, and allow individuals to express their frustrations. This is a time where, hey, you're working from home, you're doing okay, how's it going? Or are you getting enough communications from us? Or are you feeling like, that you're part of the team? Get that two-way communications going and allow them to discuss those frustrations. The biggest one is have this open door policy. Employees need to know that they can jump on Teams, Zoom, whatever, and have a conversation with their boss and managers or whatever anytime. I mean, hey, I'm going to send you an email. Can we meet up tomorrow or today, or you have some time or whatever? And if an employee says, hey, do you have some time later on to talk? Yeah, let's jump on Teams, or let's jump on Zoom, where we used to say, yeah, okay, give me a call. Take every opportunity you have to get face-to-face with them. That will help with the communications. So increase communications, have a variety of communications, and bring in the real life visual more than ever. That's really important. Okay, Emily, any questions on communications?
Yes, one question, and it
Yeah.
relates to, I think, probably the technology aspect of it. But in terms of bottom line, considering expenses and productivity, is it cheaper for companies if employees work remotely, or is it more expensive?
Okay, so here's where the big analysis is, and this is yet to be determined. This is where controversy is. Okay, and I think that rightfully so, because I think that we need to let this ride its course a little bit. But companies are looking at, what does it cost for me to have an office of 20 people, okay, a floor in a building? What's the lease? What's the upkeep? What's the cleaning on all of that? What's the expenses of, of having people there, free coffee and all? What's the expenses of that? Okay, so they're looking at that, saying, well, if we eliminate that and I have 20 remote people, where's the cost difference? And that's what companies are doing now. They're weighing this out. That's why companies that have buildings right now are concerned. I mean, they're worried, because if that shifts towards, hey, guess what? Research shows that you're saving costs by people being at home. Well, then guess what? You're not renting out floors for $30,000 a month, okay? And you don't have all the upkeep and all of that. So they're weighing out those costs. What does it cost to do certain things? I just looked up and it says, in the parking lot. I mean, try paving a parking lot, okay? So there's massive costs that go into that. Companies are weighing that out. And along with that weighing there out, they're weighing out productivity, and they're weighing out all the other stuff too, turnover and everything. And again, this is not over. The research is going to keep going, but we'll see what happens with the cost. My guess, and this is just me saying it, I think it's cheaper to have them at home. So that's just my guess. But who am I? I'm not an analyst on that part. Good. Thanks for the question there. The next one is expectations. When we talk about motivating employees, and this is one of the things that I hear on a regular basis, is I'm not sure what the expectations are. These need to be really defined. The employee needs to have clarity and also agreement on what those expectations are. It's great to say, oh, you're working from remote, they can work anytime. Okay, that's fine if that's what the expectation is. And if that's what the organization and the employee is okay with, then that's fine. But it doesn't mean that everybody works remote has that same expectation. An organization might say, hey, listen, the expectation is that you're logged in at 8 and you can log off at 5, and in between there you have, your lunch, and that's fine, as long as the employee knows those expectations. But what's happening is there's disalignment, okay? And this is where the problem comes in. It's like, well, yeah, I wasn't online for 2 hours. Is there a problem because I worked till 7? Well, yeah, there's a problem because the work schedule is 8 to 5. Oh, you never told me that. I'm working from remote. I mean, so there's confusion on both parts, okay? And I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm saying the organization Their responsibility is to set those expectations and say, okay, employee, do you realize you're working from home? The expectation is, one, you will have your cameras on when you go into meetings. Two, you'll work in and log in at 8. 3, 4, 5, and these are the expectations. Do you understand that, employee? Yes. Okay, there you go. The expectations are set. But what some organizations are doing is, you go ahead, work remotely. We're going to give you the equipment, everything, work remotely. And then all of a sudden the manager's like, I called you 3 times. Well, yeah, I ran out. I ran out because I had to go to the bank, or I had to go pick up my kids. Well, wait a second, you can't pick up your kids in the middle of the day. Oh, really? I thought it was okay because I was working at 7 o'clock tonight. I was going to do that project at 7 o'clock tonight. Okay. It may not be. So the expectations have to be aligned. When they're misaligned, that's where employees start to get unhappy, and now they're not motivated. They're getting blamed. And so that can't happen. The performance goals, milestones, all of that has to be laid out for an individual that works remotely. When that's done properly, the employee knows exactly what they need to do. Again, we do that on onboarding for the in the office person. When we sit down with them and say, hey, here's your work schedule, 8 to 5, you have an hour break, you have 2 15-minute breaks, you get, we go through that. Organizations go through it. They got policies, procedures, and everything. But yet some organizations put them out in remote and think that they know that they think the expectations are the same. It's not, or it could be, but if it is, explain it to them. And that's where there's this disconnect. So make sure those clear expectations are very defined and the employee is agreeable to them. And I'm not saying that the employee, if they're not agreeable, that you can change it. I'm saying, do they understand it? Is it like, yeah, that's okay, I'm cool with it. Okay, great, let's move on. So those expectations have to be really, really defined. Okay. The next one here, and we'll take a break for questions here, is flexibility and trust. This is huge. This is huge. I love the picture there of, I don't know when that was. I wish I know when it was. Punching a time clock. Some of us haven't seen that in years, but I've seen it in my time. Okay, you punch a time clock in, punch a time clock out, and don't punch it in right now because you get paid if it's if I punch in after this time, I get paid for all that stuff. That is remote work is not a punch the time clock. Okay, there's expectations, but it's not a time clock. If an organization has the ability, again, not all organizations can, but if they have the ability, then they need to eliminate the micromanaging. It's not about, this manage accomplishments, not activity says it all. In some organizations, if you can do it or if they can do it, it's all about the outcomes. What did you accomplish? What did you get done? Not how you did it. It doesn't matter in some companies how you do it. It's just, it's done. And that's where productivity, there's a blurred line there, because in the past, productivity was you're at your desk. Okay. Well, listen, I've worked 30 years in organizations. Trust me, okay, working behind a desk does not equal productivity. Okay. So the whole thing is, what equals productivity is what is the outcome. What did you accomplish? Did you get the report done? Did you get the sale? Did you get the analysis? That's what's important. Whether someone does it at 9 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, in some cases, I don't care. Okay. So allowing that autonomy and empowering people to manage their time, holding them accountable for the outcome, the accomplishments, is where motivation comes in. Because now people feel a sense of ownership. They have that sense where, hey, I can, I love working for my company because I can run out to the bank at 2 o'clock, but I'm going to work tonight at 8:30, and 9 o'clock, I'm going to be busting my butt, or I'm going to be in bed with my laptop working at 11. And allowing them to do that creates a culture of accountability, because now you have allowed them to manage their time. And whenever they manage their time and allowed to do that, they're more motivated to get things done. So I'm going to stop for a second because I covered a couple big ones there. What questions does anybody have? Or is there any questions written, Emily? I could talk hours a lot. I love this, Emily. Let's go on for like 3 hours.
I mean, it's clear that we need that in terms of understanding how we can keep people motivated. I think no questions at this time.
Okay.
No.
Okay. The one thing that I forgot to mention about this is this word trust. If people, employees, if you can trust them to do what they need to do, they will do it. Is there a minority of people that is a small amount that will not do that will not follow through, that will not hit? Yes, but it's no different than it's no different than an organization in brick and mortar. Okay, you have the same issues. Those issues are not going away. They're the same. Okay, if somebody's going to work hard when they're in the office, they're going to work hard and maybe even harder being remote. All right, so trust them that they're going to get it done. Allow them to prove that to you. Emily?
Yep. One question before we move on. What do you project for traditional universities in terms of sticking with in-class courses and traditional campuses? Just any personal thought on that?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting thought, because I've been in education for 20 years. Okay, I was a dean at a college, and then I became a vice president, and then I teach it. I've taught at 6 or 7 different universities. Here's where it's going. You will see more and more the transition to go online than in the classroom, and it's already happening. Even the traditional schools that I have taught with in the past, a couple of them close by here in Pittsburgh, I teach with them every once in a while when they need somebody. It's all online. They're transitioning. And there's a couple reasons. It's not a cost factor. Okay. A lot of people think, oh, well, it's cheap. It's not a cost factor. It is a cultural factor. Students are okay with being online. And you know why? Because they have been. And think about it now with COVID. How many students across the United States in 1st and 2nd grade were sitting in front of a screen taking their classes? Those same students in 15 years or 16 years are going to go to college. They're not going to want to sit in class. Okay. They are used to it. Technology is there. And, my doctorate degree, I did most of it online. I know a lot of people, I teach online. And I got to tell you, the quality is there. Nobody's going to argue with that. Schools got it down. They know what to do. Professors know how to do it. And more schools are going to totally adapt to it. Why some schools are still not adapting, and I got to tell you, you can pick the most brightest schools that are out there. They have online courses. Okay. But why are they not jumping into that totally? Is they still think there's that stigma of, hey, we need to bring everybody here, okay? And they put a value to that. And it's a false value in my mind. It really is, okay? Schools are doing a great job at it, and that's where it's going. The same way employees are going to demand being remote, okay? Students are going to do the same thing. Okay, I hope I answered that question there.
Thank you.
Okay, the last one here is collaboration, okay? And here's this is where you need to really jump out of the box and be creative. Employees need to feel a part of the team, and they need to have consistency. So, consistent meetings, and it becomes habit forming. Like I said, if you continue to do habit forming type stuff, when you don't do it, people are going to, employees are going to say, well, how come we didn't have a meeting? Or, but they have to be worthwhile. It's just not having a meeting just to have the meeting, but you want to bring people together. And you see on here, I put cameras on. I mean, we talked about that already, but that's important. And they don't always have to be, not all business. If you're managing a group of people, open it up by saying, hey, I know we're all from different locations. How's it going? How's the weather in different locations? Just like Emily opened it up here. Hey, post, where you're from or whatever. But I mean, they're your employees, so you know where they're from. But, what's some interesting thing you folks are doing or whatever? What's going on? Or, and get that personal engagement. Because remember, and I keep saying this, it's no different than in the office. In the office, I don't know about you, but I didn't go into the office and work 8 to 5 and only talk business. People were asking me, what am I doing? How's your daughter doing? Or, hey, you're driving your Harley. Yeah, okay. I mean, all kind of things. Well, it's no different. Let's get online and have a team meeting, but let's talk a little bit about what we're doing in our lives. So keep that personal stuff going. The whole thing of, being creative. And I wrote down some things, and listen, do a Google search and you'll come up with 1,000 different things that you can do. I just wrote down a couple of things here that I recommend. I always say happy hours and stuff like that. That's cool. Wind down Wednesdays. Hey, let's set our meeting at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and let's all have a glass of wine and talk a little bit, or whatever. Monday morning madness. I sometimes call it that, because hey, we're starting Monday. It's always going to be crazy on a Monday. Let's rock and roll and have some fun with it, and share experiences and interest and fun facts and some personal things, and even some shout outs. Hey, last week, Bill, you did a great job, or whatever, and bring that engagement in so that everybody's involved. I have shared leadership on here. I think this is a great thing, and I have some clients doing this where, it's not just me as the manager is running the meeting every time. Bob's going to do it next week, and Mary's going to do it the week after. And yeah, I'm going to jump in as the manager, but Mary's going to cover 15 minutes of the meeting. Get people engaged. What we're not used to is that engagement, because we're used to it in the office. We're used to saying, okay, let's all go for a meeting, and we all walk into the meeting room, and it's like, okay, let's get this done. And I'm the manager, and I'm throwing things out, and I'm just shoving things down. Okay, let's go. It's a little different. Let's keep that engagement going. Let's keep that, that communications between each other going. And that way everyone will build collaboration. So that's really important to do that. There's a ton of resources online. I could talk forever about what to do in creative stuff, but there's a ton of stuff that's online that you can be creative in doing. But it has to be done consistently, regularly, and creatively. You have to do that. Okay. So any questions on that one? Or I'm looking at the time here. I want to end on time. But these are the 5 that I mentioned. I want to open it up for questions and any comments at all. So Emily, I'll let you look and see what we got.
Absolutely. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I did want to share this as just an idea that popped up in the chat when you were mentioning these 5 strategies. Tara shares that we recently had an all HR stand down, 2 days, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. We all collectively communicated through MS Teams surrounding specific work items. We were all in a virtual work group communicating about best practices. It was actually quite productive. And just, again, the idea of keeping that open communication and just sharing that idea as an option.
And that's what I mean. Be creative. There's not a textbook on this. I mean, everybody's finding their way. So this is a time to drive new courses, new strategies and new ideas. And just think out of the box. If you're a manager or you have an organization, a working organization, there's no crazy idea. There really isn't.
And would you mind just explaining just a little bit more, if you don't mind backtracking for just a tiny bit on the clear expectations slide?
Yeah.
And yes, thank you so much. And just Francis, just to kind of go back, this is when Dr. Belsky was just mentioning how important it is to provide expectations to remote workers. And I know you gave specific examples, Dr. Belsky. Would you like to give like one more example of what that looks like?
Absolutely. And again, I always reference it to someone going into an office, because when you have employees, employees are motivated by accomplishing things that they know what they need to do. Confusion brings demotivation and unhappy employees. Okay, so we don't want to confuse employees, and we have to set expectations, because if we know, it's almost like saying, hey, Jeff, drive out west. Okay, well, I'm going to end up in Phoenix, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
But if someone says to me, Jeff, I need you to drive out west and I need you to go to Los Angeles and I need you to go to Hollywood and I need you there by next week, Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I know exactly what I need to do. And here's the thing. If we as leaders and managers do not clearly identify expectations, we can never blame the employee for not achieving them. Okay.
Right.
It's our responsibility. I can never say to an employee, why did you do it that way? If the employee looks at me and says, you never told me what to do, you can't blame the employee. Okay. So you need to set those clear expectations of the remote worker, what they're permitted to do, what they're not allowed to do, and what you expect them to do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Belsky. And just one last comment before we wrap up here. I personally love the collaborating piece that you mentioned as one of your 5 strategies, because I think through collaboration builds community, and through community and feeling like you are part of community, you build investment in that community, and you're more likely to retain better talent. And that's just a thought that I wanted to share, because this is one of the ones that I think super important in the virtual environment.
Yeah, absolutely. If I feel that it's a team and I feel like, people are friends and, I don't need to sit in a cube next to them, and you're right, building that sense of community and people that I enjoy working with, I can do it remotely just as easy.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Belsky, thank you so much. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for so much engagement and
Yes.
so many great comments and thoughts, and some great questions along the way as well, too. Dr. Belsky, always a pleasure. And we are at the top of the hour. So keep an eye out for this recording in the CTL Webinars LibGuide page. And we look forward to seeing you all the next time. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.